concern the policy in a session.
Thank you. I note also that it's on our agenda for, I think, the November meeting, which will be absolutely a post-scrutiny.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, obviously, this very much depends on whether we get approval of what's proposed. If it goes around in a feedback loop a number of times, then this could get seriously delayed. But if the RO policy, if we update it as per the consultation feedback, you know, we should just need one hit added it. What I would say, the very high level feedback from the consultation, and we got getting on for, I think, 200 responses. The disagreement on any individual question, whether strongly or whether disagree, was only in the range of about 5 to 8%. So there was overwhelming support for what the policy was doing.
Thank you, Mark. Barry, are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm just very conscious of the fact that we're going to have a lot of new members, particularly on the pension committee. Yeah. So the draft document was effectively based upon the views of the previous committee. So how much do new committee members get to have a say?
Yes, although I think it's probably. So we've been doing some work at a pool level with a company called Minerva, who have done an assessment of everybody's RI ESG position, and out of 11 funds, Cambridgeshire was joint third in terms of its approach to ESG, in terms of, you know, how progressive it is. So it's quite. I do believe it's quite a strong policy. It's also obviously operating within the constraints of what is possible for a pension fund. With regards to the fiduciary responsibility. So I completely understand it's not, the wording will be not to everyone's taste, and clearly there are differences of opinion, but within the framework and within the professional advice that the pension committee received, it obviously got strong support with the previous pensions committee. But Barry, I think you do point out quite rightly, lots of new members, they'll have to review it, and if they want it changed, then obviously the decision makers are the pension committee.
Yeah, I was basically just fulfilling my duty to make sure that they have that opportunity.
Yes.
Being effectively the board being a more scrutiny type organisation. So yeah, to make sure they have that opportunity to.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, for complete reassurance on that point, we'll probably have almost like a half-day session on it with LPB, with committee. Then the ISC will review it, and it'll be up to them to decide whether to approve it as drafted or recommend changes. It will then go to the full pensions committee for their approval, and only at that point would it be published.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Mark. If there are no other questions on the minutes, we are being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd. It's a correct record. If there are any members who do not agree with this proposal, if you would raise your hand now. Okay, I see no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record. Therefore, that motion will be carried. And we got an updated action log has been included. All but there are a couple of actions on there are future activity. And Mark, thank you. You've just filled in the item on the first page and given an indication as when. I think it would be good to get that date actually set.
Yeah.
Particularly if people are going to be going on holiday, including your good self. But are there any other questions on the action log?
Not from me.
Councillor Slatter.
Yes, excuse me, I shrunk you so I couldn't get my yellow hand. Just one point where you're talking about fixing dates. Will the meeting, will it have to be in face-to-face, or would it be possible to have that one online? What is its status?
We would definitely do it online.
Oh, that's a relief.
Yeah,
Because that is obviously the sort of thing one can
yeah.
do even if you're away.
Yeah, I think I believe the general consensus is for lots of the training to definitely be online where it can be. I mean, we are happy to do it either way, but if that is the general view, then it works very effectively. It works out cheaper for the funds as well, of course.
I'm all for that. Thank you.
So if we have taken all the points on that action log, we will take that log as noted. Can I though raise that we also distributed the action plan from the effectiveness review findings? And on there, it was talking about cyber training. And I attended the introduction session yesterday from Aon, and they've got a couple of cyber training sessions coming up later this month, actually aimed at the individual, but the individual associated with a pension fund. So that may be something worth people having a look at. Apologies for raising it now, it just is where I noted it. There are other opportunities to talk about that later. We're also being asked to note the minutes of the Pension Fund Committee meeting on the 25th of March. If any members have questions about the minutes, would they raise their hands now? No members have indicated they wish to speak, so I'll take those minutes as noted. Sorry, Barry, my apologies. Too quickly there.
Sorry, I was trying to find the page, but in the Pension Fund Committee, I noted they had a question from Mr. Richard Potter, and it was basically all related to what the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund doing about divesting from fossil fuel companies. But Mark, actually, one of his responses I'm kind of interested in is he highlighted a commitment to undertake annual monitoring. I just wonder whether the board can see the results of any of that monitoring.
The board will be able to see anything that they wish that's produced with respect to the pension fund. But this is one of the reasons I'm extremely keen for us to get a policy in place so we can actually start following the implementation aspects and the reporting and monitoring bit, which is at the end of the RI policy. It's an area we scored particularly strongly in terms of our commitments when, as I said before, that company looked at it at a pool level. But it is contingent on getting the policy in place, because obviously there are certain commitments financially that we're making if we undertake carbon reporting, scenario analysis, those kinds of things. So yes, I'm happy to, as soon as we get approval of the policy, we can start that activity.
Okay, thank you.
There is
the minutes actually say that the first iteration of this monitoring took place in 2020.
Oh, sorry. There is we did a not the full report. We did some reporting, which I am happy to pull out and circulate to the LPB members. But sorry, I thought Barry was talking about the annual. You mentioned annual reporting.
Yeah, it was just that paragraph. It does actually say, talking about effectively you set your base level in 2020.
Yeah, we took a look at it then. It obviously since then assets would have moved in terms of, but we've obviously made strategic allocation changes and things like that. So it's a baseline at a point in time. We know that it's not for. So I guess I'm probably perhaps not explaining this very well. What I'm saying is that, we may keep the same 3 active managers, let's say, and over time they change their allocations, or sorry, their different stocks, and that will have an impact. But some of the change since the date you talk about may be strategic allocation changes as well. But I'm happy to share that report with LPB members. That's not a problem.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Mark. Mark, can I also just question the final point on item 240? I have it on page 25. The minute actually says approve the amendments for consultation with employers. It actually went out to employers and members of the funds, didn't it?
You consult any consultation, you do it with those effectively the interested parties. So generally FSS is with employers, because it's the way employers are funded. Other consultations will quite clearly be with scheme members as well.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. My mistake. Councillor Sata.
If members of the board wouldn't mind, as a newbie, it would be very helpful to me if when we're talking about members of the fund, i.e. the pensioners, we say members, and if we're talking about members of the board, we say members of the board. I'm used to being referred to as a member, as a councillor, and every now and then I lose the part of the sentence because I'm busy checking in my mind which sort of member. It would be much appreciated by me as an inexperienced member of this board to, if you could just spell it out for me. I hope to catch on very quickly. Thank you.
Excellent point. I could guess that for a while there may be 1 or 2 other things where we will use acronyms or abbreviations, and please do drag us up on that so that it's clear to you.
I can pretend to be doing it on behalf of any members of the public who are listening, but I'm not afraid of us looking stupid. I'm eager to learn. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman.
There's no stupid question, isn't it? So don't worry about that. Barry, your hand is still up.
Sorry, it's more a mistake. Sorry.
Okay. I think that's being called a historic hand or something of that nature.
Legacy hand, I believe.
Legacy. My apologies. So having dealt with all those matters, we will take these minutes as noted. Thank you. Can I move on to the administration report? Mark, is this one for you or Michelle to present?
I'll be picking this one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, so this is a report that most of you are familiar with, as it's a standing item. Just for this first meeting with Councillor Slatter, I'll just explain the report a little bit and go through a bit further detail just to explain some of the content for you. So this is the kind of business as usual report that we bring as a standing item to each meeting. And it really picks out some of the administration activities within the fund. And it's our opportunity to use it as a platform to get the information across to you, so you can have a look at what's going on and obviously challenge or raise any concerns that you might have on any of the information within this report. So if I start with the main body of the report, Under section 4 is breaches of the law. So every time we bring this report to you, we will highlight any material or non-material breaches. This section of the report links very strongly with the reporting breaches to the pension regulator policy. So any breaches that either we as officers feel are material, or you as board members, we have an obligation to report any of those to the pension regulator should we feel that appropriate. On this particular report under section 4.2, as you can see there, there's an ongoing type of breach on there with the refund of pension contributions. That type of breach has been going on for a while now because of the way that the regulations are set, and it probably will be going on for a little bit further, but we've deemed that not to be a material breach in this instance. But that's the kind of area that you'd look to see if there was anything that you wanted to raise any concerns about. So moving on to section 5, that's the internal dispute resolution procedure. So again, what we do in this section, as you can see in section 5.2, everything for this particular period that we've got going on by way of IDRPs is listed in that section. And as you can see, there's 6 cases listed there. 5 of them are still currently ongoing, and 1 of them are concluded for this period. So what you'll see next time is a kind of continuation of the ones still in progress until they come to a resolution. And again, if you've got any queries or concerns about any of those IDRPs going on there, they tend just to be a handful at any one time. And you tend to get a bit of a mixture of things going on. But yeah, again, that's just a way of us communicating that to you. Section 6 of the report is the employers' admissions and cessations. So again, this is just a summary there of all the employers that have come into the Cambridgeshire Pension Fund, and under 6.2 there, any employers that have ceased the fund during that period, just to keep you up to date with the admissions and cessations during the period. So if we move on to the appendix of the report, under appendix 1, you will see the KPIs. So what we do here is we have a set of KPIs that we report back to you at every meeting. And we tend to just flag any that have not met target for a particular period. So on this particular report, which covers the period from March to the end of May, really just to highlight to the board today that there were 3 red KPIs there and 3 amber KPIs. And then what we do is on page 36 of this particular report, the explanations for why we've not been able to meet those targets is provided as well for you. Appendix 2, we always report back to you about the receipt of the employer contributions. So employers have a statutory obligation to pay their contributions over to us on time. The track record for this has been really good. In actual fact, up until April, we had 6 consecutive months of 100%, which was really good. Even for April, it's 99.2, so it's always in the 90s. So it's just, again, just relaying to you where we are in terms of the employers and how well they're doing in terms of getting their contributions over to us. That's 99.2% there. Does lead directly and links directly with Appendix 3, which is a private appendix. So what I plan to do, and as we do in most cases, we don't name any of the employers under this section, but if anybody does have any further queries, we'll move that into the private session without naming names on that private appendix, just to give a bit of an update on the top 2 cases that we've got there. Just to confirm that the top case, the employer has now paid those contributions. Obviously, there's a bit of a delay from the time that we produce the reports to publish the reports. So at the time the report was produced and published. It was unpaid, but those contributions are now in. And the second one on the list, we did not know at the time, but we know now that that employer has actually ceased. That is now going through the cessation process. So that's kind of the main essence of the report and the standard type of activities we will bring to you each meeting. But really now it's just open to if anyone's got any specific questions with any of the particular content in this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Councillor Satter.
Yes, when you were talking about the really very satisfactory percentage of prompt payment by employers, it crossed my mind, having seen the list, and we won't name names either. There was one employer who went in and came out again quite quickly. Is that because your staff actually assess some of these employers as perhaps not having the resources, the administrative resources perhaps, to be part of this organisation? So are some sort of almost interviewed and found wanting? How does that work, a quick in and out like that?
There's a standard process for getting contributions into the fund, and it's an automated process where we can tell whether an employer has met a deadline. Then within the teams, that is then chased within a team level, and then if that's not resolved at that point, it does get escalated through the employer services manager. So if an employer is in the fund, they've obviously got the right to be in the fund because they've gone through all they're either a scheduled body or they've gone through all the necessary admission documentation to be in. I would say there is a late payment policy. So what we tend to do, depending on the employer, like some of them are very small employers, like you say, and it's the material significance, what we look for, and the persistent late payers. So for example, if a very small employer paid late once, it'd just be a reminder and we wouldn't worry too much. But if that same employer was persistently paying late, say, 3, 4, 5 months in a row, then that's when we would take potentially further action, and we may even deem it significant enough to report to the pension regulator.
Sure. I mean, that is a very good explanation of why, about the rules of coming in and out. I think what tends to happen when you get one where someone enters really, really quick and exits very quickly is they've got very few staff, they come in and there might only be, in fact, one member. That member then retires. So they're only in for a few months, literally, sometimes it can be literally days. And so then they exit, that's the last member. So the employer is an exiting employer as well. But obviously the pension protection had to be put in place for that one member, even if it was for such a short period of time.
Thank you.
Councillor Satter, I mean, in the main body of the report, 6.2, that was Centre 33 entered and exited within a month. Was that the one you were picking up?
It was, yes. I wasn't quite sure whether we have members of the public, and I don't in any way want to give anybody a bad name, especially if I'm asking a question that shouldn't be asked in a way. Well, yes, you're right. You're right. That's the one.
This was in the main body of the report, and I too was curious as to why it was less than a month.
We had to say we had one in Cambridgeshire, and I believe it was that one where it was just to protect an individual, which is always the case. So that's not unusual. If there's only one pensionable person in the cohort moving across, only one person will be in the fund under that admission agreement. If they then, if they're literally coming up a few weeks later to retirement age, they exit it, and therefore the employer exits as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your explanations. Thank you.
Martin.
Yeah, thanks. I had a couple of questions. Just the first one, Michelle, you touched on it about the fact that we do have some repeat offenders, some that persistently appear. But the escalation process, are you happy that that seems to work well enough that these repeat offenders don't repeat too often?
Yeah, so over the last little while, there's actually been some work by the funding team to kind of target some, quite a while ago now, there was just a very small number of repeat offenders that the funding team kind of had to keep reminding. But as we've seen over time, the percentages of the employers paying on time has been really good and got a lot better. So I think the kind of work that team have put in with the understanding and the kind of, because it's automated now, it's very quickly for that team to pick things up and to, you know, get on the phone and kind of resolve things quite early. That I think, and also the fact that we don't accept check payments anymore. So that was a problem kind of, you know, previously where some of the smaller employers were paying by check and the checks weren't clearing quick enough and things like that. So I think a combination of the way that we reconcile the payments now, changing payment methods and a bit more, you know, proactive. I think we've definitely seen the results of that combination come through in the performance of employers now. And generally, we're really happy that overall most employers pay, you know, on time, and we don't very often see persistent problems now at all. So it's really good.
Good. And Chairman, may I just ask a second question on the Appendix 1?
Yeah.
That function or task, provide transfer in quotes scheme member, where we had 2 reds and now it's green. The explanation in the footnote was that the staff performance issues are now resolved. I just wanted to know, are they permanently resolved, or was it is it something that may reoccur in, say, this year?
Mark, did you want to pick up the staffing side?
Yeah, I think this was this was a fairly low level offence in terms of what had happened. I think it was just that someone hadn't, you know, we use a workflow system linked to the administration database, and I think it was around the not identifying the, you know, the high priority ones and dealing with them promptly, as simple as something like that. So it's just a case of a bit of training for the individual concerned. So it wasn't anything more sinister than that, really. I mean, it's always could be. I mean, you can't get around the fact with all the monitoring in the world that, you know, human error is going to mean that sometimes things obviously are missed when you're dealing with. Well, we've got across the 2 funds, we've got 150,000 scheme members. And lots of them have workflow ongoing at any one point in time. And unfortunately, if someone doesn't do something, even if they're like a day or 2 late, it can impact the numbers. But that was particularly, you know, we don't very often get red across any of our indicators. So that was addressed as a training point. And as far as I'm aware, it should be now be resolved. Obviously, we'll deal with it if it raises its head again.
Thank you.
All right.
I just wanted to add an observation to the timely collection of contributions. Just as an experienced member of the board, yeah, I very much noticed the improvement in employers' performance, because I think yourself, Dennis, I think we both used to notice lots of the same names coming up in these reports if we go back a couple of years, and now it doesn't seem to be the case. So the Pensions Administration must be doing something right.
Thank you.
Or that the employers are all being particularly good.
The first.
You're absolutely right. So, Mark?
Sorry. No, sorry. I was saying it's the first. Thank you, Chairman.
Absolutely. I mean, in the past, the thought that we would have had 6 months without any late payments just wouldn't have happened. you have, of course, set yourself a challenge. Having achieved 6 months, then we want to see 7 months, 8 months, and so on. So that's good. If there are no more questions, we're asked to move to the recommendation, which is to note the administration performance report. I believe we've actually done that. So can I move on then to the risk monitoring? And this is one for you, Michelle, I believe.
Thank you. So yeah, this is another standing item that we bring to the board at each meeting. Just for a little bit of background on it, the arrangement with this particular report is that it comes to the board meeting every time for review and input, and then we take this to the pension committee twice a year. So it's a bit of a collaboration between the board and the committee in terms of the risk register and making sure it remains relevant and fit for purpose. So on this particular report, under section 2.1, it highlights the particular review that we've taken this time round. And as you can see in the table there, there's 5 risks that have been either updated or implemented. So the first one being risk number 3, the mitigation has been updated to really reflect the task and finish group and the extra focus around the ESG reporting requirements there. Risk number 6 is actually as a result of discussions we've previously had at the board about cyber crime, cyber resilience. So we felt previously that it's becoming such a big item now, you know, with kind of pressure and direction coming from other places as well, such as the pension regulator, that we decided to separate that particular risk. So risk number 6 is a completely new risk that only focuses on cybercrime. Originally, it was part of risk 16, but risk 16 now just looks at the system security. We're hoping going forward that with all the additional work on cybercrime, obviously we've got a cyber strategy coming into place and different things that we're doing, as Councillor Payne said earlier, in terms of training, that we can really progress that risk and get mitigations where they need to be for that one as well. So that's all positive on that one. Risk number 9 has really come about. The change on that is the gross score has been increased, and we touched upon this earlier as well, because of obviously all the changes in membership, predominantly with the committee, but obviously a little bit of a change with the board as well. The risk is higher there because obviously of the duties of the responsibility of the committee and board. So what we've done there is we've updated the mitigation to counteract that. And as you've seen, the training that we've been putting on, you know, such as the one on the 21st, where all members were invited to that one. And we've got the ongoing summer programme as well, to really get members up to speed with any of the training requirements. And obviously as decisions need to be made in the future, there'll be further training offered and delivered to cover those as well. Risk 13 has been updated also. So that has seen a slight change in the residual risk there, and an additional mitigation added regarding the legal advice. And risk 14 has been updated. We've kind of noticed that delays with data is actually causing some issues, as well as with the correctness and the quality of data. So we felt it was appropriate to reference the delay in data and the impact that has as well. So the risk itself has been updated, and there's also been 3 mitigations as well, linked to that particular risk to kind of counteract that as well. So that's the risk register itself and the changes we propose to make to it. Section 3 of the report is where we list our short-term to medium-term risks. These are the ones where we don't feel it's appropriate to keep updating the risk register, as the risk register we feel is kind of more of a high-level overarching document, but it's more about what's going on at the current time, and really just to make sure we're aware of what's going on and you're aware of what's going on. So on this particular section, there's not really much to update on the pandemic. Obviously, that's been on there for quite a while now. Things are more or less the same. Staff are still predominantly working from home. I would say the only change has been some meetings have started to go back face to face. So committee meetings are now back to face, and very few office meetings are as well. So that's the only really update to that. And then the only other thing that we've kind of touched on in different areas as well is the knowledge of the committee and the board. And again, as I've already mentioned, we're just keeping an eye to make sure that we're offering and delivering as much training as possible to our new members, to make sure that they feel comfortable and, hopefully at some point confident to make the decisions and to scrutinise any decisions that come up in the future. I think it's probably just worth noting, just for Councillor Slatter, that we have had discussions about the risk register previously, and it is on the agenda for some time in the future to do a whole review of the risk register. But as it stands at the moment, this is the current version that we're using and continue to update on a basis that we bring to you. But I'm happy to take any questions on the current risk register.
So, ladies and gentlemen, are there any questions? Martin.
No questions, but I have to apologise. I did get an email from Joe asking me for my input that I offered at the last meeting, and I misclassified it, which is probably a nice way of saying completely misplaced it, forgot it was there and didn't reply. So I have actually been looking at the risk register in detail and putting something together, so I'll send something through soon.
That's lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much. Michelle, can I just say one thing about the training? I attended the first session, the introductory one, and I had some sympathy with at least one of the people attending that course asking where they asked it to go somewhat slower. There was a phenomenal amount of detail in there. But on the other hand, I did like the analogy of pensions being like a pot of Marmite. So if people didn't attend that, it may be worth just catching that one for that analogy, which was, I think, rather good.
Yeah.
Councillor King, Simon. You're on mute?
I'm on mute.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just had a question about risk 1, 2, and 3, and those are the red ones. Could you expand on those a bit, Michelle, please?
In terms of why we've classified them as red, I guess it's because it's the problem with the risk register. It's obviously very subjective and it's difficult sometimes to qualify. Those 3 in particular are the ones we felt that we haven't got full control over. So there's always something there that's, so for the first one, for example, with the employers being unable to pay, with all the best will in the world, we can talk to the employer, we can come up with arrangements, we can do as much as we physically can to help, but it still doesn't mean that that employer is going to pay us contributions or able to pay us contributions. So really, that was just our kind of perspective on how to classify those three ones. The same with economic conditions and climate change, that type of thing. They're not things that are fully within our control, where it's very subjective in terms of what's going on, you know, in the wider landscape, so to speak. So even though we kind of have mitigations in there, they're probably not enough to kind of give us the full control to be 100% confident that, you know, that they're not a risk. So we keep them kind of at the top for that reason, if that makes sense.
If I could just follow up on that, Chair, just wondered if there were any additional controls you can put in place to move that down into an amber risk.
Yeah, we can certainly have another look. As we've kind of discussed previously, the risk register is due a full review. So we can certainly pick that up as part of the review and see if there's anything further we can add to that. Yeah.
My thought, for what it's worth, Michelle, and I certainly don't have the expertise that Martin has, but I would have thought that if we need to put in additional controls, it would be sensible to do that, to bring it down to amber, because red does seem to be a little bit excessively pessimistic, I suppose. Whereas amber is maybe more realistic if there are additional controls we can put in. But that's just my thought. And, you know, I'd be very interested to see what Martin's thoughts are on it.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Barry.
I just wanted to add to your points, Chair, about the training. I just want to say my own experience. We've got a lot of training, and for me personally, it's hard to fit in with my working life. So I have double checked because I'll be watching the recordings and not necessarily going along to the live training. But I've got until the end of December to watch the recordings. So just wanted to point that out in case any other members may struggle to keep up with all that training.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, Barry. I think the fact that all the sessions now are going to be recorded is really helpful. Even if you watch it on the day and you feel like you've missed something or want a refresher, or if you're not able to make it, the fact that all those recordings are going to be available to everybody really should help with that.
Absolutely. And I also asked for and got very quickly a copy of the slides, which is actually pretty good for me in terms of remembering what was presented without actually having to sit through the whole presentation.
Yeah, and hopefully my apologies were given, and I look forward to seeing it. Probably I'll have to watch it several times.
Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just actually going to come back on the commentary around the highest level risks and just say a couple of words. I think in a sense, so you know, risk one about employers not being able to afford their contributions. It depends on how you look at it. If we're thinking that, you know, collectively all employers won't be able to, that's one thing. But if we are looking at it and going, an individual employer may not be able to afford their contributions, no matter what we do, we will always have employers who end up in that position. Because even if we recognize there's a problem and try to get more money from them quicker, that will actually force them to be in an even more precarious position. So it's you know, there's not a lot you can do apart from have the most robust funding strategy you possibly can have. So that's why that one does tend to always end up at red if you're looking at it as an individual employer. The failure to change to economic conditions, again, no matter what we do, things will always move sometimes too quickly for us to react to or to be able to predict, and therefore the fund does drop. Now, it will recover, but that can take some time. But again, we do see that as a risk, that it's quite difficult to put any further controls in that would mean it would be less likely to happen and have an impact for a sustained period of time. And climate risk, of course, is a is a very difficult one to determine. Well, no matter what stock you hold, no matter what industry it is, the ability for climate change to impact it in some way is difficult to predict. So that's why we've got that as a score of 9 at the moment. But that's not to say, Councillor King, that take your point on board, and we'll do what we can to see if we can reduce these.
Thank you very much, Martin. Sorry, Mark.
No, it's fine. Don't worry.
If there are no further points, we are asked to review the current risks facing the fund, and that I believe we have done. We can move on. The agenda plan, that's one for you, Michelle.
Yeah, I've got no further comments. It's just if anybody's got any queries on it at all.
Can I note, Michelle, in the item we're just about to move on to, it refers to a review at our November meeting, which isn't actually on the agenda.
Okay, yeah.
And certainly would help me where, I mean, for example, on the responsible investment policy, that is a post-decision review. I think it would be useful as we move forward if these can be identified as to whether they're pre or post-decision. So at least we have some feel for what's coming up.
Yeah, no problem.
Are there any other points on the agenda? Then we've been asked to note that agenda plan, and that I believe we have done. So thank you. We're now being asked to resolve that the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds recorded in the agenda pack and found on the council website. If any member would like to object, please use the raise hand function now. Otherwise, I will take that decision to move private as unanimous.